The chamber was filled with a deep metallic hiss that echoed from every wall. White vapor crawled across the floor like fog that had a life of its own. The temperature shifted between warm and cold, making the air heavy and strange. Every alien who had ever stepped into this place had fallen to their knees within minutes. This room was famous across the galaxy as the Trial of Courage, a dangerous test created by the royal family to crush the strongest minds. But today, something unusual happened. A single human entered the chamber, walking with calm steps, as if he had walked into nothing more than an empty hallway. The aliens watching from behind the thick glass stared with wide eyes. They whispered among themselves, confused and nervous, because no human had ever taken this trial before. And yet, this one walked with a relaxed face, not a single sign of fear. The chamber lights shifted to a dim red glow as he moved deeper inside. The hissing grew louder, almost like the tanks around him were breathing. Each tank was tall and filled with swirling dark liquid. Something inside them moved slowly, but its shape remained hidden behind the foggy glass. Most aliens could not look at those tanks for long, but the human kept his eyes steady. His heartbeat remained calm, steady, and controlled. The pressure inside the chamber increased suddenly, pressing against his skin, squeezing his chest, but he did not stop walking. Outside, an alien guard muttered that the human would collapse any second now, but nothing happened. Instead, the human paused in the center of the room and looked around with quiet curiosity, almost as if he was trying to understand the place rather than survive it. Then the sound of soft, confident footsteps echoed through the chamber. Out of the steam, a tall figure moved with grace and authority. She was the Galactic Princess, feared and respected by every species in the star systems. Her long glowing markings shifted with her emotions, and her eyes were cold like twin blue stars. Her presence alone made many warriors tremble, but the human did not move. He looked at her the same way he looked at the tanks, calm and unshaken. The princess stopped in front of him, her height towering above him, and tilted her head slightly as she studied his face. For a moment, the room felt quiet, even though the tanks continued to hiss around them. The princess broke the silence with a slow, almost amused smile. "Still not afraid, human?" she asked, her voice soft but sharp like a blade. She wanted to see even the smallest twitch of fear on his face, but there was nothing. The human simply breathed out slowly, as if her question did not affect him at all. This reaction surprised her. She had seen the strongest alien champions cry inside this chamber. She had watched soldiers drop their weapons and beg for mercy. But this human stood straight, unmoving, and almost too calm. He became a puzzle she could not read. She stepped closer, her eyes glowing brighter, trying to sense fear inside him, but she found only quiet strength. Outside the glass, alien watchers felt a strange mix of confusion and awe. How could a species known as fragile stand in the trial of courage like this? The princess lifted her hand, and the chamber pressure rose again. The tanks began to shake slightly, and the dark shapes inside moved faster, reacting to the change in the atmosphere. The human did not flinch. His eyes followed the movement inside the tanks with interest, not fear. The princess narrowed her eyes, trying to understand him. She walked around him slowly, her long cape sliding across the floor. She paused behind him, then stepped back into view, waiting for him to break, waiting for him to show even a small sign of weakness. But he stayed still, standing like a stone in a storm. Finally, she let out a small breath, almost like a laugh. "You are either extremely brave," she said softly, "or completely foolish." The human finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "Maybe I just want to see why everyone fears this place." His simple words created a small ripple of shock. No one had ever talked to the princess like that inside this chamber. She stared at him with a new emotion, something between curiosity and annoyance. The hissing tanks continued to thrum behind them, as if reacting to their presence, but the human did not turn around. Something about his calmness made the chamber feel different, almost unsettled, as if the room itself did not know how to respond. For the first time in years, the Galactic Princess felt uncertain. This human was not like the others. And deep inside the tanks, something ancient began to stir, sensing a mind that did not fear it. The trial of courage had just become far more dangerous than anyone expected. The princess walked in slow circles around the human, her steps echoing softly on the metallic floor. She moved with the confidence of someone who had seen thousands of warriors collapse at her feet. Usually, by this point in the trial, an alien's breath would be shaking, their knees trembling, their eyes darting away from the tanks. But this human stood still, breathing evenly, as if he were standing in an ordinary room. The princess narrowed her eyes, unable to understand how he remained so calm inside a chamber built to crush courage. She lifted her hand, and the chamber lights shifted to a deeper shade of red. The pressure thickened, making the air feel heavier. The hissing tanks responded with louder pulses, like creatures waking up. The human did not look away. His gaze stayed steady, though he could feel the weight of the princess's attention on him. Every few seconds, she moved closer, studying his face for fear. She expected a flinch, a twitch, any small sign that her presence or the chamber's power made him uneasy. But he only tilted his head slightly, watching her with quiet curiosity. This calmness irritated her. She wanted to break through his steady expression, to see the moment his courage cracked. She leaned in closer, so close he could feel the cool aura around her glowing markings. "Tell me, human," she said softly, "do you understand where you stand?" He answered, "Yes. Right in the middle of your test." Her eyes flashed with surprise. His voice held no tension. It was simple, controlled, as if he had rehearsed it. The princess stepped back, folding her arms, trying to read him. Outside the glass, alien watchers leaned closer, whispering nervously. They had never seen her react like this. She was usually calm and unreadable, but now something in her expression looked unsettled. The human's fearlessness was not normal. It was not logical. It almost felt impossible. The princess raised her hand again. This time, she activated something deeper in the chamber. A low hum spread across the room. The tanks vibrated with a strange rhythm, and shadows inside them stretched thin, pressing against the glass. The air grew colder. A faint whisper, neither human nor alien, drifted across the chamber like a soft echo. The human felt the sound brush the edge of his mind, trying to slip inside and stir fear. It was an old fear voice, created long ago by a species that no longer existed. The princess watched closely, waiting for his breath to falter. But he only closed his eyes for a brief moment, exhaled slowly, and opened them again. "Is that the best this room can do?" he asked calmly. The princess froze. No one had ever spoken during this phase of the trial. Most fell to the floor long before the whispers reached them. Her expression shifted, and for the first time, she felt something unfamiliar, uncertainty. She stepped in front of him again, her height towering over him, and placed a hand on his chest. Her palm was cold, her touch testing his heartbeat. It was steady. Completely steady. "This is not normal," she whispered. "Your mind, it does not react like others." "Maybe humans are built different," he replied. His tone was light, but his eyes stayed focused, sharp, and alert. The princess searched his face again, looking for any sign of him breaking. But there was nothing. Only that same quiet strength. She pulled her hand away, slightly shaken by the calm thrum she had felt. The tanks behind them throbbed again, this time with deeper force. The princess turned her head sharply. That reaction, fast and instinctive, was unusual for her. Something inside the tanks was responding to the human's presence. They were not supposed to do that. The creatures inside normally fed on fear, but now they were reacting to something else, something unfamiliar. The princess slowly faced him again. "You are changing the chamber," she said quietly. "It is not supposed to behave like this." He looked around. Maybe it senses something different. She studied him, her eyes glowing brighter. For the first time since he arrived, she felt something she had not felt in years, curiosity mixed with caution. This human was not simply fearless. His presence was altering the very heart of the trial. As the hissing tanks pulsed harder, the princess realized a truth she did not want to admit. This human was more dangerous to the trial than the creatures inside the tanks. The chamber grew colder, and the red lights flickered as if struggling to stay alive. The hissing tanks vibrated in slow waves, almost like they were breathing. The human watched them carefully, noticing how the shadows inside shifted with every sound. Something about the movement felt aware, almost curious. He stepped a little closer, and the princess immediately raised a hand to stop him. Her voice dropped to a sharp whisper. "Do not get too close. They sense focus. They sense energy." He paused and looked at her calmly. "What exactly is inside them?" Her eyes narrowed. For a moment, she said nothing. The chamber's hum filled the silence between them. No challenger had ever asked that question. Most were too scared to speak. Some screamed. A few fainted. But never once had someone stood calmly and demanded answers. It made the princess feel as if she stood before someone who did not respect the trial at all, yet strangely, she did not feel offended. She felt intrigued. Finally, she let out a slow breath. "Inside these tanks," she began, "are ancient fear creatures. Beings created long before my dynasty existed. They lived on fear and survived through the panic of others. When my ancestors found them, they captured them and used them for royal trials. Anyone who wished to stand beside the royal line had to face them." The human raised an eyebrow. "So you tested courage with living creatures?" The princess nodded. Her glowing markings dimmed slightly, showing a rare moment of honesty. "These creatures are not alive in the way you think. They are shadows given form. Memories turned into monsters. A single moment of fear inside your mind gives them strength." The human looked again at the tanks. The swirling movement inside seemed to pause when he stared at it, almost like it was staring back. He felt a strange pull, like something inside wanted to reach forward. But it did not make him afraid. It made him curious. "They feed on fear," he said slowly, "so if someone is not afraid, what happens?" The princess blinked. She had never been asked that question. She had never even considered it. Everyone feared these creatures. Every species had instinct. Every mind had weakness. Every challenger felt panic. But this human, he stood completely different from everything she had known. "No one has ever tried to face them without fear," she admitted. "It is impossible. Even I would never dare." He looked at her with genuine interest. "Even you?" Her expression tightened for a moment. She was a princess known for strength, feared across planets, respected across star systems. Very few beings dared question her limits. Yet here he was, simply asking like it was normal. She sighed softly. "Courage is not the same as fearlessness. Even I know that." Suddenly the tanks let out a loud, unfamiliar groan. The chamber vibrated, and cracks formed along the largest tank. The princess turned sharply toward it. Her markings flared blue in alarm. "No," she muttered. "This should not happen. They never react like this." The human stepped closer, watching the crack spread like lightning across the glass. Inside the tank, the dark liquid swirled violently. The shadowy figure inside thrashed against the walls, sensing something new. Something it could not understand. Something that did not fear it. The princess grabbed the human's arm, but not with authority, this time with fear. "We must leave," she said. Her voice was tense, sharp, shaken. "The creatures react when they smell courage, but this is different. This is new. They do not know how to handle someone like you." The human did not move. His eyes stayed locked on the shaking tank. "What are they doing?" "They are waking," she said. Her tone was almost a whisper. And if they wake fully, the chamber cannot hold them. The crack grew longer. Pieces of glass began to tremble. The liquid inside boiled with dark energy, as if the shadow creature was pressing its form against the tank with full strength. Outside the glass wall, alien watchers panicked. Some ran. Others shouted warnings. The princess stepped in front of the human, her posture tense. Her voice trembled only slightly when she said, "If that tank breaks, we are trapped with something that devours the mind before it devours the body." The chamber lights flickered again. The crack split open wider, releasing a thin line of black mist that crawled out like a living ribbon. The human stared calmly at it. The princess stared at him. For the first time, she realized the truth she never wanted to say out loud. This human was not only unafraid. He was changing the very nature of the ancient creatures inside the tanks. And the creatures were waking up because of him. The crack in the tank widened with a piercing sound, like metal tearing in slow motion. The black mist leaking from it curled through the air like living smoke, twisting toward the ceiling as if searching for something. The princess stepped back, pulling the human with her, her voice low but urgent. "Do not breathe it in. It learns you through your breath." Her tone carried a level of fear she rarely allowed anyone to hear. But the human did not panic. He watched the mist with steady eyes, studying its shape the way a scientist observes a strange phenomenon. The tank shuddered again. This time, a heavy thump sounded from inside it, something hitting the glass with full force. The alien watchers outside shouted and slammed their hands on emergency panels, but the princess shook her head sharply. "The controls will not help. Once they wake, nothing can force them back." Her glowing markings flickered nervously, a sign that even she knew this was beyond her control. Then, with one final explosive crack, the tank shattered into 1,000 pieces, sending shards of shimmering glass across the chamber floor. Dark liquid gushed out, spreading like a thick shadow across the ground. From deep inside that swirling mess, a creature unfolded itself like a nightmare taking shape. It had no solid body, only shifting layers of darkness with glimmers of red light where its eyes should have been. Its movements were slow at first, as if remembering how to exist. The princess stepped in front of the human, her posture tense and protective. "Stay behind me," she whispered, though she knew even she could not defeat what had emerged. The creature lifted its head and let out a sound that was not a scream and not a breath, something in between, something that dug into the mind like ice. The human felt the vibration in his skull, but even then, his heart did not race. The creature paused, confused by his reaction. It expected fear. It expected panic. But it sensed nothing. This hesitation caused it to shift its shape again, stretching toward them like a long shadow. The princess tried to pull the human back, but he stepped forward instead, placing himself directly between her and the creature. "No," she said sharply. "You cannot fight it." "I am not here to fight," he replied calmly. The creature's red eyes locked onto him. A ripple spread through its form, like it was trying to dive into his mind. The princess reached for him again, but froze when she noticed something unusual, something impossible. The creature's form trembled. It pulled back slightly, as if recoiling from him. The darkness around it flickered like a candle under a sudden wind. The princess whispered, shocked, "It does not know how to touch you." The human took another step closer. The creature flinched. It was the first time in thousands of years that one of these fear creatures had shown fear itself. The princess felt the tension in her chest twist. She had never imagined this was possible. Every champion before had been devoured by their own fear, but this human walked forward without a single tremor. Another tank behind them began to shake violently, reacting to the disturbance. Cracks formed on 2 more tanks. The princess grabbed the human's shoulder. "We must leave now. If more escape, even your mind will not withstand it." Her voice finally broke, revealing genuine fear. She knew that once multiple creatures entered the chamber, even the strongest galaxy warriors had no chance. But the human remained still. He looked at the creature, then at the tanks shaking behind it. They react to fear, he said softly. But if they find none, what happens then? The princess's eyes widened. You are risking everything on a guess. No, he corrected gently. I am observing. The creature approached again, slower this time, curious rather than hungry. The red eyes faded to a dull glow. It stretched a tendril of shadow toward him but stopped just inches from his chest, trembling like a nervous animal approaching someone for the first time. The princess had never seen a creature hesitate like that. It was acting, alive. Thinking. Unsure. Suddenly, the chamber lights flickered so violently that the whole room darkened for a moment. 2 tanks burst open at once, sending more shadows flooding into the air. The princess stepped back in fear, pulling the human. We cannot face all of them, she said. But the human stood firm, looking at the swirling masses forming around him. For the first time in the history of the trial of courage, the ancient fear creatures were not attacking. They were watching him. And they were confused. The chamber was now filled with drifting shadows, each one stretching and twisting through the air like smoke searching for a shape. The shattered tanks lay broken across the floor, their contents sliding into dark puddles that rippled with unnatural life. 3 fear creatures hovered around the human, circling him with slow, unsure movements. Their glowing red eyes flickered as if they were trying to understand something impossible. The princess stood behind him, her breath unsteady, watching a sight no one in the galaxy had ever imagined. These creatures were meant to terrify. They were built from the oldest nightmares. Yet now, they floated silently, unsure of their own purpose. The human remained completely calm. His shoulders relaxed, his heartbeat steady. The creatures inched closer, their forms trembling like shadows caught in a wind. The princess felt her chest tighten as she whispered, "They do not understand you. Your mind is confusing them." She had expected him to break, to collapse, to beg for escape. Instead, he stood in the center of the danger as if he belonged there. Something inside the princess shifted, a mix of fear and awe. Another creature drifted closer, lowering itself until its shadowed face hovered directly in front of the humans. The princess tensed, ready to pull him away, but he lifted a hand slowly, and the creature froze. Its form shook violently, like 2 instincts fighting inside it. One instinct wanted to attack. The other felt something it had never felt before, nothingness. No fear to feed on. No panic to drink. No weakness to enter. The creature's body distorted, then pulled back sharply as if recoiling from a flame. The human lowered his hand calmly. "They cannot touch me," he said. The princess stared at him, shocked. "Fear is their only path," she whispered. "If you give them none, they cannot survive." He looked at the creatures again, watching them slowly become weaker, their edges losing shape. "So they need fear to stay alive?" he asked. "Yes," she said quietly. "Without it, they unravel." As if responding to her words, one creature collapsed into a swirl of mist, then dissolved entirely. The others followed, shrinking in size, their red eyes dimming until they vanished like smoke fading into the air. The chamber grew silent. The trembling light steadied. The pressure inside the room slowly lifted. For the first time since the trial began, the air felt still. The princess looked around, stunned by how quickly the creatures had fallen apart. She turned to the human, her voice soft but filled with something new, respect. "You defeated them without raising a hand," she said. "No warrior, no champion, no royal member ever managed that." Her glowing markings faded into a gentler hue, showing emotions she almost never displayed. He shrugged lightly. "I did not defeat them. I just did not feed them." His simple words struck her deeply. Courage was common. Bravery could be trained. But true fearlessness, this kind of stillness, was different. It was something rare, something dangerous, something powerful. She stepped closer, searching his eyes for a sign that he was hiding fear somewhere inside, but she found nothing. It was like looking into a calm sea during a storm. The heavy doors to the chamber automatically unlocked, sliding open with a slow mechanical groan. The alien watchers outside stared at the human in stunned silence. Some stepped back. Others bowed their heads. For generations, their kind believed fear creatures were unstoppable beings born from the oldest nightmares. Yet a single human had walked through them like they were nothing more than shadows. The princess walked beside him as they stepped into the observation hall. Her tone was quiet, thoughtful. "Now I understand why your kind unsettles the galaxy," she said. "You do not win through strength or power. You win through something deeper." She lifted her gaze to him. "You win because your courage refuses to break." He smiled slightly. "Fear is normal. But some things are not worth fearing." She studied him, and for the first time, admiration showed clearly in her expression. "Tell me, human," she asked softly, "is there anything that can frighten you?" He glanced back into the chamber one last time, watching the last traces of shadow fade. "Only losing what truly matters," he said quietly. The princess felt something unfamiliar in her chest at those words. A warmth. A spark. A connection. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Then perhaps," she whispered, "you should stay in the palace. There is much the galaxy must learn, and much I want to understand." The hall fell silent again as her eyes held his. For the first time, she was not the one testing someone. For the first time, she wanted to know him, not as a challenger, but as the human who broke her fears. And somewhere deep inside the palace walls, the story of the fearless human began to spread like wildfire.